But I would almost guess that that influx is a number bigger than the 20% because we've also had a lot of out-migration. A lot of our babies have left. And that's an issue that we have struggled with and I think continue to struggle with. As far as land ownership, yeah, there's been a big change in land ownership throughout Montana, especially in western Montana, but in eastern Montana too. And a significant percentage of Montana is now owned by non-residents. People who may or may not live here more than a little bit of time in a year. People that have different ideas, different goals, and different lifestyles. So that's a significant change. A possible shift, I think you said, from natural resource-based economy, I would say a dramatic shift from a natural resource-based economy. Certainly before the 70s, we were a natural resource-based economy. We still are to some extent, but not nearly like we were. That's a very significant change. Politically, there's been a trend, an increasing trend, I think since probably the 80s or 90s at least, toward a lot more citizen participation in the details of government. Not just the big picture, you know, in the legislatures in town, but the details, the administrative hearings, the rule-making procedures, and so on. Montanans have decided to pay a lot more attention to that. I think that's largely due to the environmental awakening that began in the 70s in Montana and throughout the country, really, and a recognition that some of the natural resource industry in this state, or maybe much of it, I don't know, had been acting in a way that now was seen not to be appropriate. At the time in the 60s, the 50s, the 30s, the 1890s, it was probably state of the art. But now with an awakening consciousness, there was understanding that the environmental safeguards were inadequate. And so that was a big part of the reason that people got involved. And of course, where there's an action, there's a reaction. So people in the industries or people more concerned about economic development reacted. Culturally, I guess I would say we've become more involved but less tolerant. I think we have become more aware, but we're narrower in our perspective. We're less patient than we used to be. I think we're less open to change, frankly. And especially regarding something that's in my backyard. The whole NIMBY syndrome is alive and very well in Montana and continues to be. And it doesn't really matter what it is. I mean, it might be a subdivision, it might be a gravel pit, it might be a mine, it might be, a few years ago, it was a Mormon church coming to Billings. A few years before that, it was an interstate interchange in Helena. I mean, it doesn't really matter what it is if it's a significant development. You know, don't do it in my backyard. And that's a significant change as well. I guess that's kind of my perspective on the question. I know that we're going to get into a lot more detail on many of these aspects as we get to some more questions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Lawrence.
Pat, one thing I thought about when I was talking about the population increase, and you served as Montanan's lone congressman, but also you served as one of two. And, you know, Montana is, I think, one of 7 states now with only one. But we are the state with the highest population. We have, that one seat has the highest population of any in Montana. So now we're going into a census, and the question is, will we have enough to get another one? And really, my question to you is, are we better off with 1 or 2?
Yeah, we're better off with 2, and we're stuck with 1, including in the next census.
You think so?
There's no way. Oh, yeah, it's a certainty. There's no, the math's not going to work. We're not going to pick up another one. We're growing. Obviously, our population is growing, Lawrence, but it's not growing faster than the national average.
Right.
And that's what you have to do to pick one up. So we're not going to get one. I wish we would. One is better, two is better than one because you're on more committees. And, you know, you're better for the state. If I might make a comment and then do an introduction, take a piece of your job. First, the comment. He mentioned he was a boxing coach. He taught Muhammad Ali the Ali Shuffle. You can tell the way he is on home ground radio. He didn't actually do that. I just thought it would enliven the.
Woke him up.
Embarrass me. You did well. I'm red in the face now.
And I do want you to know, even though a medication I'm taking will not allow me to have any of those wonderful 2 bottles, those bottles are only here because I'm from Butte. Although it would be Jameson, not Jack Daniels, if I did. Okay, now if I may, an introduction. An old friend of mine is here on the evaluation committee of the humanities. This friend of mine and his colleagues are here to decide how Ken's doing. Nobody wants to comment on that? And also, you know, how the programs are working out and whether we'll have a Board of Humanities in Montana. So we want to be nice to this guy. My friend from Boise, Idaho, Mark Johnson, please stand. Mark and former Governor Cecil Andrus have worked together for, I suppose, 25 or 30 years. They're in the same firm together, and the humanities are in good hands because of Mark's efforts in Idaho and now his involvement in Montana. I don't know if I ought to say, I know I'm using my time, but it's a good purpose here. I don't know if I ought to say this, Mark, because I don't know how committed you are after all the research you've done, but Mark is writing a book about our Senator B.K. Wheeler. And you can sign up to buy one. They're only $140.
I will finish it, Pat.
You will? All right. Good. I know you will. First, about Montana's population. I'll just hit a couple of these. I agree with what you said, Lawrence. About Montana's population, for a long time, Montanans talked about building a fence around the state, you know, so we wouldn't get overpopulated. Fat chance of that, right? And then it was that, all the Californians are coming up here. So, I'm sorry, the University of Montana, and I work specifically there, teach there, and then have an office down at a place called the Center for the Rocky Mountain West, which is a university center, has done some research along with other groups on it, and we found out that the thing about Californians coming here was a total myth. Very small percentage of Californians. A lot of Minnesotans and Midwesterners, but you know who's repopulating, if we want to use that word? Montanans coming home. Half are Montanans coming back. Here's to them. Politically, in the past maybe 20 years, Montana generally, with its local, not school board, I haven't looked at that, but city, state, and federal elections has gone 20 years ago, and before that, you know, it was different, but about 20 years ago, we've gone from purple. Montana's never been red or blue state. Politically, we've gone from purple to a darker crimson shade of purple, but not quite red, and now back to a slightly more blue shade of purple.
You got that, everybody?
So we've gone from, you know, moderately Republican to moderately Democrat, don't have it in order, back again. It seems to me this is the thing to know about Montanans that maybe we don't pay enough attention to. We're independents, right? We cross tickets, right? We make up our minds, and if it's a Democrat or Republican, makes no difference, right? Wrong. We're more predictable than any state in America. 62% of Montanans vote the same way every time. 32% Republicans, 30% will vote Democrat. Come hell or high water, they'll vote for Mickey Mouse if he's on the right ticket. That's how we are. Now, is there a moving middle? Oh, sure, there is in every state, but there's a smaller moving middle in Montana. That's surprising, Des, because, you know, we're just like every Westerner. We believe our own myths. There was a wonderful administrator when I first got to Montana, the head of the liberal arts department, who called me in, and he and I visited a lot. Harry, when I first got back, I visited with you. I remember when I first got back, and I visited with Dean Fleitner a lot. And I told him, I said, President Dennison and others have asked me to write regular columns as part of my job, as long as they're in political. So if you've ever read a political column of mine, I did it at home. I didn't do it on the job. And no doubt you've read a political column of mine through at least 10, 15 years ago. Fleitner and I were talking about that, and when he found out I was going to write a column, he said, oh, well, you know, there's one thing, Pat, that I think you have to know about we Westerners in order to be accurate in columns. And I said, what's that, Dean? And he said, we are full of shit. Now, I'm not so sure we are, but I think maybe in many ways we are not, but that's what he wanted to say. Now about economic transition. The Northern Rockies probably from Denver up, have gone through an incredible transition, economic transition, during the past 2 decades. Our economies, and particularly in Idaho and Montana, were so organized around natural resource extraction that our motto was Ore y Plata, gold and silver. And we were known as the treasure state, meaning we like to think of a lot of the state as a treasure, but it meant the treasure's in the ground, according to the notes I've been able to find. Other states are the same way, but very heavily depended upon and had a culture of extractive industry. In the past 20 years, we've gone through an enormous transition and moved from an extractive economy culture to something else that we haven't named yet, but restoration, recreation, restoration, I guess I said that, vacation, tech, some kind of an economy that we haven't named yet, but it's no longer a heavy extraction economy. We'll have to decide as we go along, I suppose, whether that's good or bad, but the fact that it's real is identified with just one figure, and I'll close this question with this. Take all the timber and mining in Montana, add to it all the logging, and it's 1.8% of our employment. Yeah. There used to be a sign outside of Kalispell that said, welcome to Kalispell in Flathead County, where 60% of the people are employed in the timber industry. There were never 60% of the people employed up that, but they kept that sign up all the time. I criticized it in a couple of columns. People thought it meant I was against the timber industry. I wasn't against them all, I was just for facts. So I'll turn back to Brian.
Let's pick up on that issue. I thought the comment was very interesting that Lawrence made about we're more aware, narrower, NIMBY issue, a higher level of citizen participation around environmental issues. So how do you see this transition? First, Lawrence, do you agree that the transition has happened in terms of the natural resources economy?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
secondly,
Yeah.
what are the implications of it in terms of public policy? Do you think it's gone too far? Do you think it's the right direction, the wrong direction? What would you say?
Well, I think it's gone way too far, and let me qualify that by saying that at the time that we started in that direction, a lot of people could argue, and I might not disagree, that it was the right route to go because we were not an environmentally conscious state. in fact, we weren't an environmentally conscious country. I mean, if you think about it, it's been a revolution in thinking in just 30 years, maybe 40 years, but that's not very long. Of course, I'm getting older.
You too?
Yeah. But did we go too far?